Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Yogaberry and welcome to Backchat, which is my weekly live stream. So for those of you who are new, this is happening pretty much every week. And sometimes I cover a different topic about yoga, about scoliosis. And then sometimes I have an interview guest as well. So today I'm very happy to have a lovely interview guest. And yes, so some of you who are following me on Instagram, maybe you saw a post that I did yesterday where I talked about, I was kind of teasing the interview that is coming up today. And it's going to be all about stretching. And I think that's really a really important topic. And it's something that I get asked about all the time. Which side should we stretch more? What's the best way of stretching and all of that? So I was really happy when I came across Chrys and I saw her wonderful online course on Yoga U Online. For those of you who are teachers, it's a great resource for yoga teachers. And so I was really excited to talk to her. And I was very lucky because she did say yes. She did say she would talk to me. So Chrys is, and she's gonna introduce herself a little bit more, but she is a physical therapist and she is a yoga therapist as well. So she's kind of bringing those two worlds together. So let me bring her on. There she
Hello.
is. Hi, Chrys. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
For making time in your schedule. And those of you who are watching live, feel free to, we will chat and I will ask Chrys lots of questions and all of that, but feel free to let us know if you've got anything specific that you want to ask us about this specific topic. Obviously, let us know where you are in the world. This is always the best part of this, where we can kind of see how much of a global community this is nowadays and how people can access these resources from different parts of the world. Good. So while everyone is coming in and Laura is saying hello, she's from Buenos Aires in Argentina. Oh, this is very loud here on my side. This is London, right? It's always loud.
Oh.
All the time. So would you be able to tell us just a little bit more about what you do, why do you do it, who do you do it for? That would be great.
Sure. I've been a physical therapist for over 30 years. And over the last probably 15, 20 years, I've been integrating yoga with my physical therapy work because it's such a powerful tool to put the two together, the mind-body connection. And when I was looking at stretching, a lot of it is because I was curious, because so many of our clients come to us asking how do I stretch this? I feel tight. And traditionally, we would do a lot of stretching as a treatment for people who have musculoskeletal issues in the past. But in the last few years, they've done a lot more research into what exactly is happening when we're doing that. And I'm super curious about it because as a yoga teacher as well, that's a lot of what we do is work on flexibility. So this recent course was more like me diving into figuring out what's going on in the research to support what we're doing as therapists and to see if we're doing the right thing at the right time and for the right reasons. So that's kind of why I am kind of into this stretching information right now, just to help clarify it for myself and for anyone else who has a lot of curiosity about that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And as you say, I think, well, traditionally, yoga has always been associated with stretching, right? And with increasing flexibility. You know, that's why a lot of people want to do yoga in the first place, or that's what they have been recommended. So in the UK, for example, the GPs or the general practitioners, they tend to recommend yoga if they think someone is really stiff and needs more flexibility, and then they tend to recommend Pilates for those that need more core strength. So that's kind of the two categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two things. Good. So I'm just going to acknowledge everyone who's here. So Candice is saying hello from Connecticut. We've got Napur from India. Leah is from Greece. Lovely. Greek island. Peloponnese. Lovely. Nice. I would like to be there right now.
Yes.
Sounds lovely. Good. So why don't we kind of dive into let's go into this stretching part straight away. So what do you think is kind of the main, what do people understand of stretching, and what is it actually? What is actually happening in stretching?
Yeah, and that's the big question.
Yeah.
And if we look at what is stretching, we have to kind of define what's happening. And if we want to be on the same page, the definition I found was when we just take part of the body, material in the body, and we put it under tension, under tensile load, which means you're lengthening that area because you're extending or moving extremity in a certain position. That will create a change. What's happening is the big question, because many of us perceive that, oh, I stretch and I feel like my muscles longer. So I've gotten more flexible, more length, when in actuality, the muscle itself has not physically gotten longer. And the change that you feel from doing your stretching doesn't last that long in terms of any change in length or what we call viscosity, which we can explain a little bit. So why do we feel better after we stretch? Because I think most of us who like stretching anyway, feel better after we stretch. So that's why we want to do more of it. And then there's other people who hate stretching. Have you ever run into someone who's like, I hate yoga, I'm so tight? And they don't like that feeling. So why is that happening? What's in the body that's different from that person to a person who loves stretching and flexibility? So I think we just need to think about, well, why are we doing it? What's happening? And then make sure what we're doing is efficient for us, worth our time, and also effective for us, something that we actually need.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to this, what you said about the muscle is getting longer, but it's not actually a permanent thing, right? Do you want to talk about this a little bit more?
So we all have certain capabilities in our body. Everybody's different. I'm sure you know people who are very loose, very open, very flexible, and then other people who aren't. And that capacity is pretty much the same throughout our lifetime. And the less movement we do, the less feeling we have of being able to do that. For example, let's say if you've been sitting on the couch for a long time, or if you're older and get out of bed in the morning, you may feel stiff at first when you first get up. And that change is a change in your nervous system because you've been in one position for a long time and the muscles have been in more of a contract or shortened position. But when you get up and stretch, like, oh, get up in the morning and stretch, I feel so much better. I didn't gain anything that I didn't already have. So I already had that flexibility, but I felt tighter because I'd been in bed or sitting on the couch for a while, and my body kind of got used to that. And then when I got up and tried to move maybe quickly without warming up, the body's like, whoa, what's going on? And it's sending signals. Wait, are you okay? Is this okay to do? And then the more you move, the body's like, oh, okay, you're just starting to move. I'm going to not try to protect you as much, not send you those signals that say, wait a minute, don't move quite so quickly. And those signals start to be dampened and the body feels like you can move more easily. But the actual capacity of your muscle to get to that certain length is not that different. It's just your feeling of how it is. Like your interoception is one of the words they use, of how you interpret those feelings, those signals from your nervous system. And that's something I think that people have a hard time understanding, because they feel like, oh, I need to get more flexible. No, that's, you may just need to move.
Right.
In those places that you don't usually move, so that you can feel better when you do go to those places.
Yeah.
So that, if you're at a desk all day and then you say, okay, I'm going to go play tennis this afternoon, so I get ready to serve that ball, and it's like, oh, I'm so tight. Well, maybe you're just feeling that way because you were in a shortened position all day, but you haven't, like, if you do a few pec stretches and dynamic stretches before you hit that tennis ball, it feels better. And then you're able to hit it without that resistance. But that change in sensation is what's happened. You haven't actually taken that muscle and made it longer physically. It was always that same length. It's actually good news. You always had that capacity. Yay. You're not trying to get something that's really hard to get.
Yeah. So it's almost more like resetting rather than changing, right?
Right. So
Or
it's good news, I guess, is what I want to get across. Like, people who say, I'm so tight, I'll never feel good doing X. Well, that's probably not true. You may not be able to, let's say, if you're a yoga practitioner, I'll never be able to get my foot behind my head. Maybe not. But will you feel better when you're moving in that direction than you were before? And then when you get to that capacity that your body has, that's probably where you should stop, not try to force it into what we call the plastic range, is where we go past our body's capacity and try to force change, where we start damaging tissues and then we can't get it back to where it should be. We overstretch and create permanent change that we don't want, which maybe make us too flexible. And a lot of times that will happen in your ligaments and tendons. And those are the things that are supposed to be more stabilizing versus flexible.
Yes. And I'm thinking right now, of hamstrings, because that's kind of the first thing, the thing that where most people immediately have a problem with that, right? They try to touch their toes and then can't get anywhere and then get really annoyed usually. And how come it like if you do practice, or if you practice regularly, I do feel that you can get better at these things. But how does that work when the muscles are not actually getting longer at all? What's happening there?
Good question. So again, we call it stretch tolerance, and each person has their own stretch tolerance. And let's say if you're doing a yoga practice and you first start out with sun salutations, some practices start right away with sun salutations, which require a lot of forward folding and a lot of opening of the back of the body and the front of the body. At first, you're going to feel what we call, and I don't like to throw a lot of terms out, but I'm going to give you a description to help you understand. So at first, we feel what we call passive resistance torque, which is basically, think about when you have a pair of jeans and you get them out of the dryer and you first put them on and they're pretty stiff, and you try to sit down and you're like, oh, they're stiff. They're not stretching. But then after you've worn them an hour or two, all of a sudden they don't feel that stiff. And that's kind of what happens in our body. The jeans didn't change. They were always the same jeans. You didn't get a spandex or Lycra jeans instead, or turn it into Lycra. But the resistance changed. So think of it as you're doing those sun salutations, and the more you do, the better it feels. You're changing the resistance in the tissue versus the actual length. You always have the same capacity, but you're changing the nervous system's response. And many times the nervous system is there to protect us from injury or pain or discomfort. So it's going to give you little warning signals, which in us feels like tightness, to help us not go too quickly into a movement that might not be ready for.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, talking about these sensations. So especially those with scoliosis, everyone kind of has like this, a very, very typical sensation is around the convexity of the curvature, that people feel that tightness and that kind of the need to, or they feel like, oh, I really need to stretch it out. What is, why do we think that? Why do we kind of why do we feel that stretching it is going to be the solution?
And that's just such a great question and such a common curiosity. So what we have to look at is, why does it feel tight? What's happening that makes it feel tight to us? And many times it's because those muscles are overworking to compensate for imbalances in the body. Same thing with the hamstrings. The hamstrings love to fire when your core is unstable, when you're unable to hold your posture. So when you're unable to maintain stability in the spine with those with scoliosis, or for people like with tight hamstrings, they have certain muscles that are overworking, and the hamstrings will overwork commonly, as well as the hip flexors, to stabilize the body. So as long as the body's trying to stabilize by holding on tension in the hamstrings, they're going to feel stiffer, tighter. And then as you develop more core engagement and over time core stability and strength, those muscles don't have to hold as much tension to hold you up. And so they relax, have less tension. And that's why you feel, oh, my hamstrings are more flexible now. Well, they, again, didn't change in length, which really, it's just semantics. It's really just, if you, I guess what I would like to get across is, if you have tight hamstrings and just keep stretching them, or if you feel tightness in your back and just keep stretching it, it's not going to change anything. They're going to continue to feel tight until you address the cause of the stiffness. Why is it stiff? If you can address the cause, then all of a sudden the flexibility work is going to pay off.
Yes, and I sometimes see this with people, people who are very flexible, and they love stretching, right? I mean, well, first of all, they're good at it, right? But they really love that stretching sensation. And I sometimes think, because I'm not a naturally flexible person, I kind of had to to help myself a little bit there. But you know, in yoga classes, you see a lot of hypermobile, very flexible people, and they're stretching even further, right? And then they're like, I'm not feeling the stretch, but I want to feel a stretch. So it's almost like this obsession of getting those specific sensations, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when we feel after a yoga class, we feel more flexible, relaxed. It feels good. The body is more calm. Those people who are already flexible have a higher tolerance to stretch. So their body doesn't kick in that warning as soon. And so they can go further within their capacity. And many times they have a lot more capacity, because that's just how they're born. That's nothing they've achieved by doing a lot of stretching. Now I'm hypermobile. Not unless you've overstretched and impacted the integrity of your joints, which we hope wouldn't happen. So those people who are like, I think I have to keep pushing past a certain point to continue to, it's almost like a drug, feel that, when actually you don't need to do that to feel relaxed and feel the nice effects of a flexibility session.
Yes. So it's maybe rethinking some of these.
Yeah, more on breath. That's what's going to make you feel good, is actually your breath, changing your autonomic nervous system response, which means your fight or flight or freeze, get out of that state into calm, steady. That's what makes you feel better. The stretching has nothing to do with it, really. Other than making you feel more easeful movement. So you're like, oh, I feel like I move more easily. Yeah, that's part of it. But
yes, but it's not because you've been in those deep stretches that you feel like that.
Or a certain point, like you don't have to get to the extreme to get the benefit. In fact, it's probably safer because we don't want to demonize. I don't like to demonize anything and say, oh, that's going to hurt you. Don't ever do that. But it's probably more prudent and safe to stay within the ranges of motion that are functional and useful in life and not push past a certain range that's not necessary and maybe will put you at risk to get into your ligaments and tendons, and those, if they're continually overstretched, will tend not to rebound.
So if I understand this correctly, so those who are more flexible, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have longer muscles. They just tolerate the stretch better. They have less kind of sensations in that direction.
Right. They actually need to be more aware and more tapped in to their body sensations. And a lot of times the way we help them with that is have them engage the muscle as they're stretching it. And that will give them more information so that they can feel when they're going too far. And it's really important that they are creating more awareness versus pushing to the point where the awareness is actually a warning sign.
Yes.
And the good thing,
Leah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to tap into one more little great fact, which is like one of the best things I love to teach hypermobile people is when you go to those end ranges that, sometimes feed our ego, especially in a yoga class. Look at me, I can do this. You can't see my leg. I can do this. Are you strong there? So
can you hold it there?
Exactly. And if you can, then awesome, because that means you've developed strength within that range of motion that you have, and you can use it. So you're strong and flexible. Yeah. Where if they can't, if you ask the easiest way to help them see that or help yourself see that, if you're a person who has hypermobility, is if you can't hold your body or get your body into that position on your own with the use of your muscles, the muscular engagement, then maybe you shouldn't go there until you've built the strength and continue to work on strengthening to get there. That's a great challenge instead of just going to an extreme, which really for you isn't too much of a challenge.
Yeah. And I always think of ballet dancers for this because they make it look so easy, right? All the movements that they do. But if you think about it, that requires a lot of strength, right? To lift your leg all the way up there and like hold it there and doing those slow and graceful movements.
Absolutely.
And they obviously have that flexibility, but they are also really, really strong.
Correct. And, you don't see a ballerina lifting their leg up and holding it with their hand.
No, exactly. Or with the yoga strap, right?
Yeah. They're lifting their head up or cranking their leg over their shoulder to get in an arm balance. They're actually using their muscles to get to that position.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So Leah had a few comments here. So she's saying she's naturally very flexible. So she's saying, as a hyper flexible body, I've been focusing on strengthening my core to support my S-curve in the last 3.5 months as I'm new to yoga. Your advice is invaluable. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, and I think this, we are getting more and more of this. I think in the yoga community, I see a lot more people kind of bringing in some of that strength, resistance training, and things like that, and kind of realizing that it's not. Sometimes, we might think yoga can fix everything.
Right.
We like to think this, right? But then, we might just have to rethink a few things and, add something else to it as well. So Laura's saying sometimes we get confused between being flexible and being strong. In fact, flexibility could be against strength many times. Yes, and I think it's stability, right? That we're talking about here, really, isn't it?
Yes. I have a word that I made up a few years ago, and it's called mostility. So it's mobility with stability.
Right.
You know how they take celebrity couples and they put their names together. So you want mobility and stability, and that's going to make you feel better, and you're going to feel healthier and move more easily and achieve your performance goals if you have them, when you have both those going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I wanted to talk about as well is this, so with scoliosis, and most people in this community, they're quite savvy. They know, what's going on. They've seen their x-ray, and they have that little bit of information about which is the convex side, which is the concave side.
Yes.
And then one question that always comes up is like, which side should I be stretching? And then obviously from what we learned now, is there any point in this? Because as we know, the muscles are not actually going to be permanently longer, are they? Even if we do stretch one side more.
So I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is why does it feel that way? So what can you do to address the reason that the muscle feels tight on one side? And also, creating the strength to hold a lengthened position. I think one of the poses we do a lot for scoliosis is trikonasana, or triangle. So, and I love your little shirt that has the spine on it, because you can really see how a pose like triangle, and you might want to demonstrate this if you want.
I can, yes. I don't have my top with the spine on today, but I can demonstrate.
But you can pretend like you have maybe a C curve in one direction, and why a pose like triangle would actually, so your shortened side would be towards the earth. So that
if we say, so I have a left lumbar curve, so this is my left side, so my curve goes to the left. So what happens if I go to the right? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I always get confused in scoliosis. So if you're
here it would shorten, right? My already shortened side, it would shorten it. It would shorten it a little bit even more, right? If I went.
Yes. So if you were practicing triangle, go back to the right though, and think about, okay, in trikonasana, my right side wants to shorten more. How could we work on lengthening that side and at the same time strengthening it? Would be just to lengthen that side, right? Like you are now, and maybe reach your arm out, your right arm out. So, and you reach it towards that opposite wall. So you're really lengthening that right side and making it even, because triangle, the whole point of triangle, or there's all kinds of triangles. Let's say for this triangle, is keeping your torso the same no matter what your hips are doing.
Yes. It's kind of a neutral spine, isn't it? And it's coming more from the hips.
Yeah. So you're hinging at your hips, and then right now what you're doing is you're actually lengthening the right side, which likes to be short because the spine is curved, and you're strengthening at that range of motion. So you're teaching those muscles, hold here, don't hold here where I'm curved, hold here. And at the same time, the left side is getting more neutral stretch to be where you want it to be.
Yes. And this is actually, I was thinking when I was trying to hold it there, this is super challenging for my left side, actually.
Yeah. Because it's used to kind of curving that way. Now you got to contract those muscles to neutralize that curve.
To neutralize it. Yes, exactly. And then the other side, it's like a
interesting. Huh?
This is nice.
Yeah.
I don't have to work so hard here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always why I tell people, because they will always ask, should I only be doing this on one side? And I would say to that, no, you can do it on both sides. You just do it differently, right?
Yeah.
You
And like you said, it might be hard. It's probably going to be harder on that side that needs it more. Just like we have one pose that we hate. That's the one we need the most. So
yes.
building that capacity over time, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good. So let me just go back to the chat before I ask my other questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, there's nothing new. That was from Laura, was saying we sometimes get confused between flexibility and being strong. So the other thing I think that, again, you know, it comes back to the same thing, but I think we cannot say it often enough. Is at some point in this community, there was this thing about lying on a foam roller, right, and stretching out the concave side. Now, and then asking, does that fix scoliosis?
Mm.
What would be your response to this? Is this a good idea to do, and maybe for what reasons should we be doing this, and is it going to lead to a straighter spine?
I think in a combination. So just doing that would probably not be enough. Doing that will definitely make you help to release tension on that side and help you learn how to release the tension, and it feels really, really good. So it's a great part of what you're doing. It's a great addition. But just doing that, just stretching without addressing the cause, just like we said, why is it tight, feeling tight, is not going to be able to really be enough to change it.
Especially if the reason why we do it is that we think, well, the muscles are going to get longer then on that side that is short. Well, that's not going to last, right? From what we know now. And I think you were in the course, you were pointing to some research, and I think the maximum was like an hour or something like that.
Yes,
is that right?
There's not a lot of research out there that will show that it lasts more than an hour at the most. We always have to take research with a grain of salt. They haven't done a lot of follow-ups on their stretch studies to find out. They had one that looked at holding stretches longer periods, and it had a longer time that it was effective, but then they didn't look at them over time. So it'd be really great to know, like, over time, what the results would be. And
how
another
this would change.
yeah. And a lot of the research projects as well go to the individual subject stretch tolerance. So it's very subjective. So there's like, okay, tell me when to stop the stretch. Well, each person is going to go to their own personal tolerance. So they're starting to look at other factors and put those into the research studies so it can be more objective versus subjective. Because when it's subjective, it's not really research.
Yes. Very difficult. And you can always prove something with a study, but then you can also prove the opposite, really. You'll find a study, right? that proves the opposite.
For sure.
Unfortunately.
For sure.
Good. So Leah is saying thank you for the triangle correction to the lumbar curve. So yeah, I think that's always and I think that always makes it quite visual, obviously, when I have this kind of spine on there, and it helps with a self practice sometimes, just to kind of visualize what's happening, because that's another problem with scoliosis. The proprioception is off, right? We don't really know where we are in space, really, and sometimes you just need someone else to look at it, right? And a teacher to
mirrors and that shirt are great tools to use, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to shall we talk a little bit about the different types of stretching, and maybe if there are better ways, or kind of, yeah, what kind of are the pros and cons? I know this is a big topic, but what do you think?
Well, yes. I looked at the different types of stretching that are most commonly used and came up with 6 different types. And most of us are familiar with all these. We have the ballistic stretching, which they used to do back in the 60s and 50s, where, you know, you were getting ready to play a sport and you would do bouncing stretches, or we did this in the 80s.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you remember the Kalanetics, you know, videos and books? And I think it was all about, it was like everything came in 100, and you were doing like this for 100 times, and then you do like this for 100 times, and then you go forward for 100 times.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the very much bouncy.
Yeah. And in reality, you know, the research does not show that is not an effective way to stretch. However, the risk of injuring yourself when you're doing it that way is higher, because you're not able to control how far you go, because it's so quick. You're using a lot of body weight, which maybe forces you past where you should go. So the risks are higher than the benefits. That's when I look at anything, I'm like, what are the benefits? What are the risks? If the risks are higher than the benefits, why would I do that?
Yeah.
So is there a different way to do it that doesn't have as high a risk? Yeah. So the next type of stretching a lot of us are familiar with is dynamic, which is now more common when you see athletes prepare for their activities. They're not doing a long passive holds in their stretches as much as they're doing dynamic movements, big movements that mimic what they're getting ready to do.
So what like a lunge, for example, something like this?
Like repeated lunges. Like, let's say if we pick a sport, let's say you're a track athlete, you would do some leg lifts, maybe knee lifts, hip circles. But you see, everybody's like, that's not stretching, that's moving, but it is stretching. Look what you're doing. You're lengthening. When you lift your knee, you're lengthening the glutes and getting your body ready. So that is a stretch. Just because you don't hold it in forever doesn't mean it's not stretching, lengthening that area of the body. So that is what we do actually in yoga, is we start our practices with slow vinyasas, and in most styles, some styles they don't, but I find that most styles of vinyasa yoga, at least, you're going to do slow repetitive movements. That's what a sun salutation is, with breath, to prepare for those other poses later in the practice where you might be going deeper into a position and maybe holding in that position longer. So yoga is a great example of dynamic controlled stretching.
Yeah.
So the third one is where you have active and passive stretching. We call it static stretching. So that's when you go to a position and you stay there.
Yes. So I think we had the example of the leg stretch, for example, isn't it?
Yeah.
So either with the belt or without the belt, isn't it?
Yeah. So when you have the belt, you're passively stretching because you're holding your foot in that position or your leg in that position because you are holding a belt around it. So your muscles are kind of not having to work a lot. I mean, maybe your hip flexor is working some to bring your leg up, but then once you're there, you can kind of hang out, which is really a nice way to stretch. It's a way to be able to be in the position longer. Certainly you can get probably further in the stretch to expand your capacity more within what your body is able to do. And then if you take the strap off, you'll all of a sudden feel your hip flexor working, and you're going to get more activity around the muscles, around the hip. The hips.
Yeah, so I feel my quads now a lot more.
Yeah. So
working.
That would be your active stretch. And look at you. You have good strength to hold that position that you had. So it's a great test. Is, okay, I'm going to do a passive stretch to X position. Can I hold it there? And if you can, it's like, cool. That means I'm
Yeah.
strong there. I'm good there. So that's a great thing to have.
Yeah, I think it's the most obvious in the standing one, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
and again, I'm not the most flexible person in the world, but yeah, we can hold it there, but then what happens when we let go?
Yeah.
This is how high I can have it, right? I could not lift it higher than that, so that kind of makes it really obvious.
Yeah. And that's the ballerina example. Look how strong they are to be able to do those type of positions.
Yes, exactly. So we've got the ballistic, we've got the dynamic, the
and the
passive and the
static.
active.
And we have PNF, which is a fancy word called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation.
Okay.
And it came from the physical therapy world. And basically, it's using muscle energy to facilitate more relaxation. So most of the time, we're either contracting the muscle for a few moments that we're stretching. So if it's your hamstring, you would try to bend your leg instead of straighten it without moving it. So maybe you could demonstrate that because it's hard to verbally describe.
Yeah.
So like when you're stretching your hamstring, you would actually press your leg downward as you're pulling. So you press down. It's called an isometric contraction. So her hamstrings are contracting and the nervous system is sending a signal to the spinal cord to relax those hamstrings after a few breaths because it's getting these sensory signals into the tendons. And so after
I'm pressing my leg into my hand, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you release that, and all of a sudden the leg moves.
Yeah.
So the theory is that you're stimulating a reflex, the Golgi tendon organ reflex, which is a protective reflex that we have that goes to the spinal cord and it tells the body, hey, you got too much tension here. You need to relax before you hurt yourself. There is some controversy over if that's actually happening, but we certainly see it happening. Something's happening where when we contract the muscle, it's shortening a little bit. And then when we relax it, it relaxes a little bit more. So that.
And I think this is often done by someone else, isn't it? That somebody else would.
It can be, but you can do it on yourself. I actually recommend we do it on ourselves because we're in control of how much resistance. When someone else is doing it to you, it's hard for you to really control how much resistance they're giving you. And what if they give you too much and strain your muscle?
Yes. I had I don't know if you saw it, but I had my 7-year-old help me out with that one. And I said, push my leg, and then let go. And obviously, he's 7, obviously.
Yeah.
So he was like pushing it all the way. I'm like, no, too much.
Right. I know. It's like, wait, stop. Yeah. So that can happen with anybody. And then there's another theory that they use, which is called reciprocal inhibition, where you contract the muscle opposing the muscle that you're stretching. Because if you think about it, if you're straightening your elbow, where's my elbow? If I'm straightening my elbow, the biceps is lengthening. The triceps has to relax for this to lengthen. If my tricep keeps contracting, it's not going to lengthen. So you need to, so what happens is this one is contracting and that allows this one to relax. So I might have said it backwards just a second. So this one has to contract to extend the elbow.
That to lengthen.
Yeah, I said it backwards. So for this to lengthen, this one has to contract. And for this to lengthen, this one has to contract. So if you put a little tension around the opposing muscle, it sends a signal to the body, to the brain, actually through the spinal cord to relax the opposing muscle. So a good example is hamstring stretch. When you're in a seated position, we contract our quadriceps to help our hamstrings feel more release. That's when I use it most often.
So that's when you're sitting in a chair
or on the floor, staff pose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And so
like
you
this, and I'm engaging.
Yes.
The quads too.
Yeah. So because you're contracting your quadriceps, it sends a signal to the spinal cord to relax your hamstrings so that you can go deeper because that relaxation response.
Yeah. Okay. So what's this type of stretching?
Reciprocal inhibition or PNF.
Okay.
PNF.
Oh, that's still the PNF. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And, you know, again, there's some controversy on exactly what's happening there and if that's actually happening. But in the past, that was used a lot and it's safe and effective. And you can feel that relaxation happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So that was, have we got all the 6 now, or was that?
We have one more, which is the resistance stretching.
Right.
And this one, many times in some circles, they don't even call this stretching, but it's the way that we build eccentric strength in the muscle, which is as the muscle's lengthening, we're resisting that happening.
And
it's
I'm
like
grabbing my resistance band.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's going to be useful.
Yeah, it might be a good demo, but like biceps again. I'm trying to get my camera here. Nope. Oop. I don't know why I can't get in front of the camera. Okay, there we go. So resistance stretching. If I'm trying to stretch my biceps, as I stretch it, I'm actually pushing against my hand the whole time throughout the range of motion. Right. So the muscle is definitely lengthening. But at the same time, it feels resistance because I'm pushing up with this hand. So what's happening is, especially at this end range of motion, I'm getting stronger because I'm providing resistance. And the one way you can actually increase the physical length of your muscle is through eccentric training. Right. So I was thinking of this one. Right, where we do this to trapezius, you know, to contract those muscles, but really what's also happening is you're lengthening across the front of the chest, right? The pectoral muscles when you're. Would that be an example? Yes. Because I'm pulling, so it's hard, but I'm stretching at the same time. Right. I'm opening here. I'm lengthening. Well, that's a great example. Yeah. Yeah. Great example. And it's just it's a great way to stretch, to build strength and build awareness. That's a good technique to use with our hypermobile people. And if you have a reason, I always like to emphasize to want a longer muscle, and reasons would be, I'm a baseball player who has to really get his shoulder super long to throw that ball and super strong. He would train eccentrically in that range of motion because they actually do increase the number of sarcomeres, which are the little cells in the muscle. They increase the number when you do that. You're not going to get that in a yoga class, or that has to be very specific, sport specific, intentional training. So if you're going to do that, for that reason, I would work with a personal trainer or a sports strength training specialist to do that, so that you make sure you don't injure yourself, because that would be, for that reason, something intense. But in a yoga class, what you can do is add some resistance as you're stretching for the reasons we talked about before, to get stronger at those ranges of motion. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking of Chrys therapy, which is the scoliosis-specific physiotherapy, and a lot of it is isometric contractions or eccentric in that concave area where they put you in a position where you're lengthening, but you're also activating the muscle. Yeah, and as you say, you know, that has to be really specific. Yes, and it's very effective. Very effective. So Leah is saying, what about the stretch of being cross-legged and twisting right round to face behind you and doing same on the other side? Is there a correct way to support our particular curve type? So
That's a more complicated stretch, right?
I'm going to give that to you. That's for the scoliosis specialist to answer.
So, I mean, there is a lot more, there's a lot more happening, obviously, when well, first of all, when the legs are crossed, and then so if we're thinking about it in terms of stretching, right, I would always ask myself what's happening in this shape, right? And what is being stretched, and what is, what might we have to consider. And this way, I feel like a nice opening across the front of the right chest. So I'm quite happy with this. But then there might be other things going on, right? And scoliosis obviously comes with an inbuilt rotation as well, which makes it super complicated. So what I always say is bring yourself out of your curve pattern first, as much as you can, and then you go into the movement. That's how I approach it. And you will probably see that you cannot go as far as you think. Because with the scoliosis rotation, like if I wanted to, I'm like an owl, I could probably turn around quite a lot. But if I'm actually thinking about, no, I need to bring my convex side in a little bit more, I need to lengthen here, finding more length here, and then I turn, I cannot go very far. So that's how I approach it nowadays.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Of kind of coming out of that habitual pattern first, and then take it into movement.
Yes.
Good. Lovely. Anything else? I think we've got all the 6 stretches.
Yes.
So we like the last one, right? The one with resistance. That's a good one, and maybe one to think about. What about yin yoga?
Yes. So yin yoga, prolonged stretches that we do to help. Well, what's the purpose of yin yoga, right? And it has a lot of energetic benefits. And then also, if you've ever noticed, a lot of the yin poses are around the hips, low back area, where we have a ton of fascia, deep connective tissue, which takes longer to release. So in those areas, we hold the poses longer because it takes longer to get to that point where those tissues start to release. And the key here is to put yourself in a position where you're feeling a load, which, like, I always think of frog pose in yin yoga. I don't know why. There's so many other poses, or a forward fold. But have yourself.
That's because you don't like it, right?
No, I love it. I love it.
You love it, yeah. Okay.
I don't like
it.
I don't like it if you don't have support. So just hanging out without some support for your body to fall into causes the potential for you to go past, again, your capacity into the plastic area. So you should practice with props, and to the point where you feel sensation of lengthening and stretching, but you're not feeling like sharp, burning, stabbing sensations, which means your body's telling you you're going too far. And having a prop there is a perfect way to support. Yes. And then sometimes if you're in the pose for a few minutes, you can take some of the prop away and go a little bit further. That's called creep, as the tissues start to let go. That's the whole point of doing it, is you're wanting the tissues to let go, but you still have that support to stop you before you go into the danger zone.
And that's when I always think of, well, this is where the problem comes in, isn't it? Because what if you don't feel that? What if you don't have lots of sensations there, and you are hanging out in a danger zone all the time because you haven't got those stretch.
Yeah, the question is, why are you doing yin yoga? So I find yin yoga physical. Let's just think about the physical part, because there's so many benefits to yin yoga energetically, mentally. So if your purpose in yin yoga is to get more flexible, and to get deeper into the connective tissue and release that, then that's a great practice for you. And you're the one that's going to help you get into those deep connective tissue binds. That's good. If you're already hypermobile, if you're practicing in yoga, I would practice it to get the energetic benefits. I mean, that's why I would practice it if I were hypermobile, and make sure even more so that I'm supported, because I know my body can go and I won't know it until it's too late. So, I'm already hypermobile. I don't really need yin yoga on the physical end to get more loose in my fascia. I don't really need that. I'm already mobile. But if I love how I feel in yin class, it helps tap into the meridians and a lot of healing energies. Definitely just make sure you use some props and don't let yourself go too deep, because you don't really need to get the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That was amazing. I think that gives us a lot to think about, and just kind of a lot to consider, and maybe reconsidering what we're doing already, right? And how we're doing it, and maybe what we need a little bit more of. Anything else you want us to know, or any other tips that you can give us?
I think just practicing your awareness is a huge asset. And just like when Christine was demonstrating the twist, it's all about awareness of where your body is and your energy is and your breath. The more you get good at that, the more effective everything's going to be. So that's really, awareness is, to me, the essence of yoga. And if we can get better at that, then everything else is going to follow that for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Lovely. So Judy is asking a final thing. She's asking me, but I'm going to ask you. Do you go to the gym and use weight stack machines, or is yoga the only thing you do?
I am a big strength training proponent, big time. I strength train 3 times a week.
Right.
It's very interesting how strength training has made me feel less flexible, because I had gotten hyper flexible in certain areas, and concentric strength training actually not decreases your sarcomeres, but adds more sarcomeres, what they call them parallel. So it makes your muscles more stiff. So that's not a bad thing. Flexibility is not, what do we say? It's being flexible. It doesn't make you rich or smarter. It's not an attribute. It's not a virtue, right? Balance to me is a virtue. So strength training, especially for women, I'm 60. As you get older, if you have any
No
women,
way.
Yeah. So if you have any women in your audience, once you turn 50 and your body starts like shifting where it likes to put body fat, and you're like, what's going on? Strength training for bone density and helping your metabolism is a game changer. So I'm a big strength training proponent. Doing yoga was not enough, especially once I got into my late 40s, 50s. Yoga was not enough.
Yeah. Yes. And I turned 41 this year, and I had to add a lot more strengthening into my practice, because I was feeling that I wasn't getting the support. And it's those little niggles, right, that give you some signs if you listen to them, right? And same thing as you, I kind of reduced my flexibility, because I knew I kind of needed a little bit more support. And that was really a physiotherapy who was helping me with that, right? He said, look, this is what's happening. And you can do all your yoga and it's great, but make sure that you're also strengthening around those areas as well.
Yeah. And there's a point in your yoga practice, as much as you can only do so much with body weight, you'll get to the point where you need to have more than body weight exercises. And that's where going into the gym and actually lifting weights will be the next step after you get strong with body weight.
Brilliant. Well, I still don't like going to the gym, so I'm gonna have to. I've got weights at home, but that's about it. I don't.
You can get it done in 15 to 30 minutes if you do it right. You can have a really good, effective program, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, in and out, boom.
Yes. Good, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And there's thank yous coming in here as well. Judy is saying, you ladies look amazing. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all's interest, and kudos
We'll
to you
take that.
for caring about your health to find out more. That's great. That's the first step.
Yes, absolutely. Good. So how can people connect with you? How can they find you, Chrys?
You can find me on my website and at fityogatherapy.com. And I'm on social media as Chrys Kub, and I spell my name weird. You can see it on the screen.
Yes,
Chrys
we can see it
Kub,
there.
Fit Yoga Therapy. And right now, I used to do a lot of teaching of yoga teachers, and I do have an online program for yoga corrective exercise specialists.
Yes, I saw that.
Yoga teachers. Yeah. And then now I'm shifting my energy in-person energy to holding yoga retreats. So if you're looking for a fun vacay, I'm holding one next spring in the Virgin Islands. So,
ooh, nice.
Yeah. So it's for women 50 and older. I'm targeting women like me who are kind of in this stage of life. But if you're one of those women, check it out. You might want to come check it out and come join us.
Sounds amazing. So I will, I think I did put the link in the description as well. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Stay on a little bit, but I'm going to say goodbye to everyone.
I thank you guys.
So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.